The first time she said it, I thought I misheard. You're a nobody. The words didn't just land, they echoed. We were standing in the middle of the living room, cardboard boxes stacked like silent witnesses around us. My wife, Emily, was folding clothes into a suitcase, my suitcase. Her hands moved quickly, mechanically, like she had rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times. And her mother. She stood by the doorway, arms crossed, lips curved into a smile that didn't belong on a human face. You heard me, she said again, tilting her head slightly. You're a nobody. That time, there was no mistaking it. I felt something cold slide down my spine. Margaret, I said slowly, forcing my voice to stay steady, I think you're crossing a line. Oh, sweetheart, she laughed, waving her hand dismissively. There was never a line to begin with. You just imagined one because it made you feel important. Important. That word hit differently. Because deep down, I knew I was. At least not in her eyes. And maybe not even in Emily's anymore. I turned to my wife, searching her face for something, anything, a flicker of defense, a sign that she would step in and say, Mom, stop. But she didn't. She didn't even look at me. Emily, I said, softer now, almost pleading, what is this? She zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was final, sharp, like a door slamming shut in my chest. I think you should leave, Daniel, she said. Just like that. No emotion, no hesitation. Just a decision. My throat tightened. You want me to leave? She finally looked at me. And what I saw in her eyes was worse than anger. It was indifference. I think it's best for both of us. Both of us. As if I hadn't spent the last 6 years building a life with her. As if I hadn't poured everything I had into this marriage. As if I was disposable. Margaret chuckled softly behind her. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You've overstayed your welcome long enough. I clenched my fists. You don't get to decide that, I said, my voice sharper now. Oh, but I do, she replied calmly. This house, I paid for it, the furniture, mine, the car in the driveway, also mine. She stepped closer. And the woman you married. Her smile widened. Was never really yours. That did it. Something inside me snapped. Emily, I said, ignoring Margaret completely now. Look at me and tell me this is what you want. For a moment. Just a moment. Her expression faltered. But then it hardened again. I've been thinking about this for a while, she said. We're not compatible anymore. Compatible. God, I hated that word. What changed? I asked. But I already knew the answer. Her mother. Margaret had never liked me, not from the beginning. To her, I was always not enough. Not rich enough. Not connected enough. Not ambitious enough. Never mind the fact that I worked 2 jobs to support Emily while she finished grad school. Never mind that I stayed up nights helping her study, cooking meals, paying bills, holding her together when she felt like she was falling apart. None of that mattered. Because I didn't come from money. Because I didn't wear expensive suits or talk about investments over dinner. Because I was one of them. You didn't answer my question, I said. Emily sighed. I grew up Daniel. Those 3 words cut deeper than anything her mother had said. I didn't, I replied quietly. She didn't respond. And that silence told me everything. Margaret stepped in again, like a director stepping onto a stage to correct a failing performance. This isn't about growth, she said. It's about reality. Emily has a future, a real one, and you. She looked me up and down. You're just holding her back. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out bitter, broken. Is that what you told her? I asked. Margaret didn't deny it. Emily didn't either. And suddenly, everything started making sense. The late-night talks they'd been having. The way Emily had started pulling away. The subtle criticisms, the distance, the coldness. This wasn't sudden. This was planned. You've been working on this, I said slowly. Emily looked away. Margaret smirked. Of course we have, she said. Did you really think this was spontaneous? My chest tightened. 6 years. 6 years, reduced to a strategy. A quiet campaign to erase me. Wow, I whispered. Don't be dramatic, Margaret replied. This is actually very simple. You pack your things, you leave, and everyone moves on with their lives. Everyone, I repeated. She shrugged. Well, maybe not you, but that's not really our concern, is it? I stared at her. And for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not just as my mother-in-law, but as the architect of everything that was happening. Cold, calculated, ruthless, and terrifyingly patient. You've been waiting for this, I said. Her smile didn't fade. Good things come to those who wait. I shook my head slowly. No, I said, this isn't a good thing. That depends on who you ask. I turned back to Emily. One last time, I said, tell me this is what you want. She hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw it. A crack. Small but real. Hope flickered inside me. But then, yes, she said. And just like that, it was gone. I exhaled slowly. Okay. Margaret raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting more resistance. But I was done. Arguing wouldn't change anything. Begging would only make me smaller in their eyes. And I had already been reduced enough. I walked over to the suitcase and picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have. Maybe because it wasn't just filled with clothes. Maybe because it carried 6 years of my life inside it. I paused at the door. Not because I wanted to stay, but because I needed to remember this moment. Every detail. Every word. Every expression. Because something told me. This wasn't the end. Not really. You're making a mistake, I said, without turning around. Margaret laughed. Oh, Daniel, she said, the only mistake was letting you stay this long. I opened the door, stepped outside, and as it closed behind me, I heard it. The click. Soft. Final. Like the end of a chapter. But here's the thing about endings. Sometimes, they're just the beginning of something else. Something darker. Something stronger. Something unexpected. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty driveway. Then I took out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped at one name. A name I hadn't called in years. A name that represented a part of my life I had left behind. For Emily. I hesitated. Then I pressed call. The line rang once. Twice. Then, Daniel. The voice on the other end sounded surprised, curious, and slightly amused. Long time, he said. I took a deep breath. Yeah, I replied. It has been. A pause. So, he continued, to what do I owe this sudden reunion? I looked back at the house one last time, at the life I had just lost. And then, I smiled, because for the first time in a long time, I felt something new. Not sadness, not anger, but clarity. I need your help, I said. Another pause, then a quiet chuckle. Well, he replied, this should be interesting. Oh, I said. It will be. Because they thought I was a nobody. They thought I had nothing. No power. No options. No future. And maybe, once upon a time, they were right. But not anymore. Not after tonight. Not after everything they had just done. Because if there's one thing people like Margaret never understand, it's this. Sometimes, the person you underestimate the most is the one you should fear the most. And I was done being underestimated. Done being dismissed. Done being nobody. They wanted me out of their lives. Fine. But they had no idea what they had just unleashed. And by the time they realized it, it would already be too late. This wasn't the end of my story. Not even close. This was just the beginning. The city looked different that night. Maybe it was the way the streetlights flickered against the rain-slick pavement. Or maybe it was me, seeing everything through a lens that had just been cracked open. I stood under a dim neon sign outside a rundown bar on the edge of downtown Chicago, suitcase at my side, phone still in my hand. This wasn't the life I had built. This was the life I had left behind. And now I was back. The door creaked as I pushed it open. A wave of smoke, cheap whiskey, and old memories hit me all at once. Nothing had changed. Except me. Well, I'll be damned. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Victor Hale. 6'2", tailored black coat, eyes that always looked like they were calculating something 5 steps ahead. He was sitting in the corner booth, exactly where he used to sit years ago, like he never left. Like he had been waiting. Still dramatic with your entrances, I see, he said, taking a slow sip of his drink. I walked over, setting my suitcase down beside the table. And you're still lurking in the shadows, I replied. He smirked. Occupational hazard. I slid into the seat across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other, sizing each other up. You look different, he finally said. So do you, I replied. That's because I am. I nodded. Yeah, me too. Another pause. Then he leaned back, folding his arms. So, he said, let me guess. You didn't call me after 5 years just to catch up. I let out a quiet breath. No. Good, he said, because I hate small talk. I almost smiled. Emily left me, I said. Victor didn't react the way most people would. No sympathy. No surprise. Just interest. Left you, he repeated, or you got thrown out. I hesitated. Both. That earned a small chuckle. Now that sounds more like the Daniel I remember, he said. I leaned forward. It wasn't just her, I added. Her mother orchestrated the whole thing. Victor's eyes sharpened slightly. Margaret Whitmore. I blinked. You know her. He laughed. Know her, he said. Daniel, everyone in certain circles knows her. A cold feeling settled in my chest. What do you mean? Victor set his glass down carefully. Margaret Whitmore isn't just some overbearing mother-in-law, he said. She's a strategist, a deal-maker, a woman who's built half her fortune on controlling outcomes and the people involved in them. I stared at him. You're telling me this wasn't just personal? Oh, it was personal, he replied. But with someone like her, personal and business are the same thing. I shook my head. No, that doesn't make sense. I don't have anything she'd want. Victor raised an eyebrow. You're right, he said, you don't. That stung. But before I could respond, he leaned forward slightly. But your wife does. The words hung in the air. She just finished grad school, right? He continued. Top of her class, finance. I nodded slowly. Yeah. Victor smiled faintly. Emily Whitmore is about to step into a world where names matter, connections matter, image matters. And I don't fit into that picture, I said quietly. Not even a little, he replied. Silence. Then. She used me, I said. Victor shrugged. Or she outgrew you, he said bluntly. I clenched my jaw. Same difference. Not really, he replied. One makes her a villain, the other makes her practical. I leaned back, exhaling sharply. I don't care what you call it, I said. I just know I'm not going to let them walk away like I meant nothing. Victor's eyes lit up slightly. There it was. The reason I had called him. Now we're getting somewhere, he said. I want them to feel it, I continued. What they did, how they did it. Revenge, then, Victor said casually. I didn't hesitate. Yes. He studied me for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether I was serious or just hurt. Revenge is expensive, he said finally. I'm willing to pay. With what? He asked. I hesitated. Because that was the problem. I didn't have money. I didn't have connections. I didn't have anything that could compete with Margaret Whitmore. Victor seemed to read my thoughts. You don't need money, he said. I frowned. Then what do I need? He leaned in, lowering his voice slightly. You need leverage. The word sent a chill through me. Leverage, I repeated. Everyone has something to lose, he said, even people like Margaret. I shook my head. She's untouchable. Victor smiled. No one is untouchable, he said. Some people just hide their weaknesses better than others. And you know hers? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. He placed it on the table between us. I might, he said. I stared at it. What is that? Information, he replied, the kind that doesn't show up on public records. I didn't touch it. Why are you helping me? I asked. Victor leaned back again, watching me carefully. Because 5 years ago, he said, you walked away from this world, from me, from everything we built. I swallowed. I chose a different life. You chose her, he corrected. He wasn't wrong. And now, he asked. I looked down at the envelope. Then back at him. Now, I said slowly, I want my life back. Victor's smile returned. Good, he said, because the life you chose. He gestured vaguely. Didn't suit you. I picked up the envelope. It felt light. Too light to carry the weight of what it probably contained. What's the catch? I asked. Victor laughed softly. There's always a catch, Daniel. I knew that. So what is it? I pressed. His expression shifted, just slightly. Less amused. More serious. You don't get to walk away this time, he said. The words landed heavy. If you do this, he continued, you're in, fully, no half measures, no second thoughts. I held his gaze. And if I do? He shrugged. Then you go back to being exactly what Margaret thinks you are. A nobody. Silence stretched between us. I thought about Emily. About the way she wouldn't look at me. About the way she said, I grew up. About the way her mother smiled as I walked out the door. My grip tightened around the envelope. I'm in, I said. Victor nodded once. Good. Then he leaned forward again, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Because the moment you open that envelope. His eyes locked onto mine. There's no going back. I didn't respond. I just opened it. Inside were documents. Photos. Bank statements. Emails. And one name that immediately stood out. A name that made my stomach drop. Wait, I said, flipping through the pages. This can't be right. Victor didn't look surprised. Oh, it's right, he said. But this, I held up one of the documents, this could destroy her. He nodded. Yes. And you're just giving this to me. I'm not giving it to you, he said. I'm offering you a choice. I looked at him. What kind of choice? Victor's expression hardened. The kind that defines who you really are. I swallowed. Meaning you can use that information, he said, and bring Margaret Whitmore to her knees. A pause. Or, he let the word hang. Or what? Or you can close that envelope, walk out that door, and go back to whatever's left of your life. I stared at the documents again. At the secrets. At the power sitting in my hands. This wasn't just revenge. This was destruction. And once I started, there would be no undoing it. You said everyone has something to lose, I said quietly. Victor nodded. They do. I exhaled slowly. Then I guess it's time she does. A slow smile spread across his face. Welcome back, Daniel. And just like that, the man I used to be, the man who walked away from this world, was gone, replaced by someone else. Someone colder, sharper, more dangerous. Someone who wasn't afraid to play the game anymore. Because if Margaret Whitmore wanted to treat my life like a strategy, then I'd show her exactly how ruthless a strategy could be. And this time, I wouldn't be the one getting played. Not anymore. Revenge doesn't feel the way people think it does. It's not loud. It's not explosive. It doesn't arrive with screaming or chaos or some dramatic storm crashing through your life. No. Real revenge is quiet. Precise. Patient. And by the time it unfolds, it's already too late to stop it. 3 months. That's how long it took. 3 months to dismantle everything Margaret Whitmore had spent decades building. And I didn't rush a single step. Because Victor was right. Leverage wasn't about force. It was about timing. And I learned quickly. Faster than I ever thought I could. The first move. Silence. I disappeared. No calls. No messages. No attempts to reach Emily. To them, I became exactly what they believed I was. A nobody who faded into nothing. And that's what made it work. Because when people stop paying attention to you, that's when you gain the most power. I watched from a distance. Carefully. Patiently. Margaret's world was polished on the surface. Charity galas. Board meetings. Public appearances. Everything about her screamed control. But underneath, cracks. Tiny ones. Invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for them. But I was. Victor helped me understand where to look. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Transactions that didn't quite add up. And one very specific deal. A deal that should have never existed. You see this, Victor said one night, tapping the file in front of me. I nodded. Yeah. This, he said, is her weak point. I leaned in. It was a series of transfers. Large ones. Hidden behind layers of corporate structures. But once you followed the trail, it led somewhere very interesting. Somewhere very illegal. She's been moving money, I said slowly. Not just moving it, Victor replied. Hiding it. For what? He looked at me. Insurance. That made sense. Someone like Margaret didn't just build power. She protected it. And this. This was her safety net. Her secret. Her vulnerability. What happens if this gets out? I asked. Victor didn't hesitate. Everything collapses. I sat back. And for the first time, I felt it. Not anger. Not pain. But something colder. Control. She called me a nobody, I said quietly. Victor smirked. And now, I looked at the documents again. Now she's going to wish I stayed that way. But I didn't act immediately. That was the difference between who I was and who I had become. The old me would have rushed, would have exposed everything in a moment of emotion. But not this version of me. This version waited because timing wasn't just important. It was everything. The opportunity came on a Thursday night. Margaret was hosting a charity gala. Big one. Media. Investors. Influential people from every corner of her world. Including Emily. Of course. I saw the photos online. She looked different. Confident. Elegant. Like she belonged there. Like she had stepped fully into the life her mother had designed for her. And for a moment, just a moment, I felt something. A flicker of what used to be. But it passed. Because that life, that version of me, was gone. I closed the laptop. It's time, I said. Victor nodded. Then let's end this. The plan was simple. Expose everything. But not all at once. That would be too easy. Too clean. No. This needed to unravel. Slowly. Publicly. Painfully. Step 1. A leak. Anonymous. Targeted. Just enough information to raise questions. Not enough to answer them. By the next morning, it was already spreading. Financial blogs. Whispers in investor circles. Speculation. Unusual transactions linked to Whitmore Holdings. Nothing definitive, but enough to make people look closer. Step 2. Pressure. Regulatory bodies. Audits. Investigations. Once the right people started asking the right questions, Margaret couldn't control it anymore. and control was everything to her. Step 3. The final blow. The one that would make everything collapse. I saved that for the gala. Victor and I stood across the street from the venue that night. Lights, music, laughter spilling out into the city. It's almost poetic, Victor said. What is? That it all ends where she feels the most powerful. I watched the entrance. People arriving. Smiling. Unaware of what was about to happen. Let's go, I said. We didn't go inside. We didn't need to. Because the real damage wasn't physical. It was digital. And it was already in motion. At exactly 9:17 p.m. It hit. Emails. Documents. Proofs. Sent to every major investor. Every board member. Every journalist who mattered. Undeniable. Unavoidable. Unstoppable. Inside the gala. Chaos. Phones lighting up. Whispers turning into panic. Conversations stopping mid-sentence. And at the center of it all, Margaret Whitmore. I didn't need to see it to know. I could picture it perfectly. The moment she realized she had lost control, we stood there in silence for a few minutes. Then Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. It's done, he said. I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious. Not yet, because there was one more thing I needed. Wait here, I said. Victor raised an eyebrow. Where are you going? Closure. Before he could respond, I crossed the street, walked straight through the front doors, and into the storm. The room was exactly how I imagined. Tension, fear, confusion, and right in the middle of it, Emily. She saw me immediately. Her eyes widened. Daniel. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I walked toward her. Slow. Calm. Controlled. Hi, Emily. What are you doing here? She asked. I tilted my head slightly. Watching. Watching what? I glanced around. At everything falling apart. Her expression shifted. From confusion to realization. You, she said, this was you. I didn't answer directly. Instead, I asked a question. Do you still think I'm a nobody? She swallowed. Daniel, this isn't. Careful, I interrupted gently. You might want to choose your words more wisely this time. Before she could respond, another voice cut in. Sharp. Furious. How dare you? I turned. Margaret. Gone was the composed, controlled woman I had known. This version was unraveling. You did this, she said, stepping toward me. I met her gaze. Yes. The word landed like a gunshot. You have no idea what you've just started, she snapped. I smiled slightly. Oh, I do. You think this will destroy me, she continued. You think I don't have ways to recover. Maybe you do, I said. Her eyes narrowed. But not from this. She froze. Just for a second. And that second told me everything. You found it, she whispered. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Her expression shifted again. Fear. Real fear. You shouldn't have done this, she said. I stepped closer. Lowered my voice. You shouldn't have underestimated me. Silence. Heavy. Thick. Final. Then, I turned away. Because I was done. I had said what I needed to say. As I walked toward the exit, Emily's voice stopped me. Daniel, wait. I paused, but I didn't turn around. I'm sorry, she said. The words hung in the air. Fragile. Late. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, then opened them again. Yeah, I said quietly. You should be. And with that, I walked out. No dramatic goodbye. No lingering glance. Because some chapters don't need a perfect ending. They just need to end. Outside, Victor was waiting. Well, he asked. I exhaled slowly. It's done. He studied me for a moment. And how does it feel? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Then I gave him the only honest answer I had. Quiet, I said. Victor smiled. Yeah, he replied. That's how you know it worked. I looked back at the building one last time. Light still shining. But everything inside. Broken. Just like I had been. Only now. I was the one who had put the pieces back together. On my terms. You know, Victor said, this is just the beginning. I glanced at him. I know. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of that. Because I wasn't a nobody anymore. I was something else entirely. Something they created. Something they unleashed. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that people like Margaret Whitmore don't fear nobodies. They fear what nobodies become. When they have nothing left to lose. And now, I had everything to gain. So I walked away from the wreckage of my old life. And into something new. Something bigger. Something far more dangerous. Not as the man they threw away. But as the man who came back. And took everything.